water dropping this far, certainly made sense to put in some turbines here. General Electric installed a turbine here. I don't remember the year anymore. But they make 1.1 megawatts here with that vertical turbine. And everything's probably at max efficiency, if you will. I was told that all of the lock sites combined that generate electricity could actually power the city of Buffalo and some of the surrounding area, which would be really cool to do, providing very low and cost-effective, good energy at a low cost-effective rate for people who live nearby the lock sites that make electricity. But because that's an option, that's probably why they don't do that.
Behind us.
Well, you only need one lock master here to run both locks here. 34 and 35 are connected by the gates in front of us here. And he's located in a little white booth on top of that staircase you see there to the right. It'll be easier to see once we get higher up in this lock. But he's basically in the middle and he can watch both locks and operate just about everything from that one spot. All it takes to open and close the gates here is a pair of 7 horsepower direct current electric motors. That's as far as the motors take the gates. You can see a little bit of daylight still between them. What's going to seal the gates shut tight is the difference in water pressure. As soon as the water starts coming into this lock to fill it up, that's when you'll see and hear the gates just push close all the way. Basically, once we have a higher water level in here versus where this came from. So it's all by design. I'm betting the water's starting to come in now. You can feel the boat moving. There go the gates. So if you're looking in front of us, you can see the water getting turbulent. The entire lock will get turbulent shortly, so you'll see it right next to us any second now. The water comes in all by gravity. No pumps whatsoever. They don't pump water in and out of here or back and forth between the locks. It is constantly just gravity fed. Lake Erie feeds the Niagara River. The Niagara River feeds Erie Canal directly here in Lockport. And water flows eastbound and down, and snow can abandon. Until Lake Erie runs dry, that's how it's going to keep working. Because we're pretty much at the top of the canal here, Albany where the canal technically starts is that seal. So the water, like I said, comes in all by gravity through the walls within what are called raceway tunnels. Raceway tunnels are 3 feet in diameter. 12 of them total, 6 on either side of us. That brings water in from underneath us, on both sides of us, and throughout the entire length of the lock. Probably got pushed away from the wall and pumped it back in. If we have boats across from us, which does happen fairly often, especially on busy holiday weekends with a lot of traffic out here, we wouldn't be going up that fast. Bunker boat sounds fun, kind of expensive in here though, so they don't want to let that happen. So we would be going up slower if we have more boats. There's no set number as to how many can be in here at a time. The lock master, that's at his discretion basically. So he'll allow as many boats in as he feels comfortable at that point in time. It's going to be based off of how big the boats are, whether or not they have ropes or cable to hold on to, and other factors would include the perceived skill or sobriety level of the captains on board those boats. We all know that guy who takes his boat out only 2 weekends a year and never sober. If you're ever at a lock site, you see a long line of boats waiting to get in while one guy comes crashing through. Probably the answer. We're hydraulic cement ever mixed in this country, used to build that wall, build locks, stack all that stuff together. You then had wooden lock gates, which you can see the top portion two replica wooden lock gates on two of the locks here. You're seeing over the top of the wall. Manpower to open and close the gates and transfer the water. Today's locks, poured concrete, steel gates, and electric motors, replacing everything that was previously manpower. The grass here is basically showing you where the water would have been when these locks over here were used. The stone wall you're seeing is the interior wall of the downbound locks, the 5 locks that were here before they built these modern locks. The lockmaster can't open the gates on purpose or by accident until we have equal water pressure on both sides. So that means we've gone up 25 feet now in lock 34. We'll move beyond the gates into lock 35 and continue up another 25 feet in the next lock. Hard to see from this angle, but one good look you might get at it. Up on the staircase to the right, just below the American flag, you can see some gentlemen there. They are life-size, lifelike statues. The actual lock tenders that used to work in the old flight to 5 here back in the day. So that's not all of the crew. The crew was a 13-man crew. Not all of them are there yet, but that is a lock tender memorial tribute. And a local artist is making sculptures with everybody in that picture, in a picture taken of the lock tenders. And then they're casting them bronze and setting them on the stairs where they were sitting for that photo. That was taken back in 1897. Making sure that log wasn't as small as I assumed it was. Never want to be surprised.
A
little bit. These walls here, I think that one's at least 12 feet thick, maybe more. And this one is probably closer to like 30. So, barely scratches. You're not going to have a chance to make it to the Maid of the Mist today. Kind of the same thing.
That's this afternoon.
So they actually fixed, this was leaking a lot more a few years ago. So they put new seals on the lock gate, and it's not leaking out nearly as much as it used to come out a lot further in. The whole front of this lock was actually full of mist, so it really was a lot more like it. And even though I was joking, it is kind of the same thing. The Niagara River is what flows over Niagara Falls. The Niagara River is what feeds this section of the canal. And this is the Niagara. They can start from somewhere in the middle and dig in both directions where they start and end the canal at the same time, as opposed to starting from one end and digging clear across the canal. And starting in Rome allowed them to complete a very big section of the canal rather quickly. One of the heading west from Rome, if I'm remembering this correctly, is a very level section of the canal. There's not a lot of elevation change, so they can take a long time before having to worry about building any locks. This allowed them to complete a lot of the canal rather quickly. Within the first 4 years, about half the canal was done from New York State. So it wasn't just this whimsical number. Despite the fact that nothing like this had been done in the country at the time, it was probably the biggest engineering feat of the century, especially considering there were no schools of engineering here in the country at the time. You had some engineers that they got their degrees in England. There were no American-taught engineers here on the job. The canal was essentially built by farmers that had books and diagrams how to build canals. We just use the same names for everybody to keep it confidential. It's like we're federal agents or something.
Is this the only place where there's 2 locks back to back?
I think so, with one caveat that I believe there's at least one other spot on the system that's got like double set of locks, but I think there's more of a space in between the two where these are literally touching each other like this. Anyway, yeah, estimated $7 million to build. Took pretty much that much to build it, and that was kind of easy. That it was going to cost $7 million. Really had to cost $7 million, or it wasn't going to get done. It was New York State alone that funded this project and built it. Built by New York State outright, funded by New York State outright, no federal involvement whatsoever. All right, top of Lock 35. Got a lot going on here. We're 50 feet higher up than when we left the dock. We are also now at the very top of the Erie Canal, 567 feet higher than where the canal starts at the Hudson River in Albany. Same level as Lake Erie, Niagara River, top of Niagara Falls.
We are 577 feet higher.
2 sets of gates in front of us that you noticed opening up. To my knowledge, Lock 35 here is the only one set up this way, where you have the actual lock gates open up first, secondary set of gates a little further out that are identical, but they're called buffer gates. Buffer gates were put in as a safety precaution to protect the actual lock gates. I'm sure it was a forethought that once these really big concrete and steel barges are coming down the canal, they're real heavy, they can crash into the lock site. If you crash into the buffer gates and you damage them a little bit, no big deal, because the actual lock gates here in front of us are the ones that need to be in perfect working order to make the lock function. Know the name of the big bridge here in Lockport? Good question. It's just called the Big Bridge. Now that's the official name of this bridge here, the Big Bridge. Called that for good reason though. But it was built in 1913. This was the widest bridge in the world. 399 feet wide. We just went underneath Church Street, north-south. Main Street is running on a diagonal across this bridge. Saxton Street crosses at this end. This half is City Hall parking lot. This half is a parking lot for an old restaurant that's no longer in business. If you took Main Street to get to our building today, you went over this bridge likely, depending on what part of Main Street you started from, and you didn't even know it. It's very different until you're on a bridge. No longer the widest bridge in the world, but it is the widest single-span bridge over water in North America.